Okay, now that we have the topography and we have two views under 3D views, we duplicated the original 3D and created a 3D exterior rendering. We can now go back to the 3D view, double click on it, it should be the same, and turn off some of the components so that we can keep building our model. So we can click right on the topography and right click and pick hide in view category. And then you can click right on the trees, right click, hide in view category. That way we're back to the model in this view, but the other view will show it. We can now go back to the visual display, which is hidden. It makes it a little easier to work with if your drawing becomes slow. And if you hold your shift key and the wheel of your mouse, you can rotate or orbit here around your model as a little bit of review. Or you can use this view cube. Some people will hold their left mouse button down on this ring and you kind of get a chance to orbit. Or you can use this full navigation wheel, which is kind of nice because you can hold your left mouse button down on orbit and move your mouse around to orbit. Or you can hold your left mouse button down if you don't have a mouse with the wheel on zoom or pan or rewind. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close out of that. I have a wheel on the mouse and I would recommend that you get one. It's a little bit easier to work with. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put a foundation wall, a footing, and a basement here, floor. So the first thing we should really do is go establish those levels. So we'll double click on any one of these elevations and take a look at what we have. We have a roof, a second floor, and a first floor. One way to pull these elevation markers out is to select one of the elevation markers and then just hold your left mouse button down right on that transition between the line and this marker. There's a little circle there. You can hold your left mouse button down and drag that out. We really should have uppercase for all of these so that when we drag them onto our sheet, this will be the name of the drawing. So we can either click on this heading and click again and replace it with second floor plan. Click in space. It'll ask you if you want to rename the corresponding views and just pick yes. Or you can go over to the project browser and select your view, right click and pick rename to change it. And again, would you like to rename corresponding views? Yes. And now we have the uppercase. So what we need to do is to establish here a foundation level that we can use to place the basement floor. To keep things simple, we'll go ahead and create a level that's -9 feet for the basement floor, keeping in mind that you have the structure itself of the floor, and we'll come back to that when we create our wall section. So at the top right corner in the architecture tab, we're going to click on level, and then if you get close to that first floor line, elevation line, you can see here that light blue number. You can use that as a reference if you'd like to find 9 feet and click. Pull your mouse over here until it lines up with the edge of the first floor plan and click. You see how it automatically says a -9, but you can always select that and change it. We also probably should create another one that would be just 4 inches down from that. Instead of trying to get that number, I'm just going to click anywhere. Pull your mouse over and click, and then we'll just change this number. So use your escape key to hit it several times, or pick the modify button at the top left, which really does cancel out of everything. That button should be called escape, I think. Anyways, if you get close enough and click right on here, that lower one, and then click again, you can change that to something like negative 9 foot 4 inches, so that we take into consideration the 4-inch floor, basement floor, and that will be the bottom of our foundation wall or a basement wall. Let's go ahead and click in space there, and you see how it kind of like gets really close to the other elevation marker. So we'll need to scooch it down so that these two aren't overlapping. If you highlight that bottom level, you'll see that there's this little squiggly line right there. You're adding an elbow to it by selecting it. So let's go ahead and click it. And you see how it kind of like drops it down? Now we can use these blue little circle grips to pull down here the name, so to give it more room. And then we need to change the name of both of these. Let's change here this one to basement floor plan. I'll click in space, pick yes for renaming the corresponding views. And this one down here would then be the bottom of the foundation wall or the top of the footing, whatever you'd like to use. I'll use top of the footing. Top of footing. I'll just go ahead and click in space and pick yes. And I can use these little blue circle grips to bring this down and over so that there's enough room for both. There it goes. By creating levels, you can draw objects from one level to another. It's a perfect way to add a deck or stairs so that you can control where it starts or where the bottom constraint is, where the top constraint is. So now let's take a look at the 3D view so that I can show you what happens when you place the basement wall or the foundation. Let's go ahead and double click on the 3D view, and we'll go to the wall tool. In properties, we can drop the list down of different walls, and there is a wall here called a foundation wall or foundation 12-inch concrete. We can modify how thick that concrete wall is if we wanted to make it a 10-inch or an 8-inch by selecting it and then picking edit type, and then make sure that you duplicate these families. So this is typical with several things that we've been working on, and everything that you want to create, we want to duplicate it. We can call this foundation 10-inch concrete and pick OK. And then now go into structure, click on edit, and just change the thickness here to 10 inches. Make sure that you type in the inches. So type in 10 and then inches. I'll go ahead and pick OK and pick OK again. What you'll notice here is that there's a base constraint, a top constraint. But the idea about the foundation wall and also structural columns, when we start to place those, is that instead of having a height, you have a depth. So you have to be real careful where your wall starts and how far it goes down, negative. So this one would be negative 12 feet. So let's go ahead and escape out of that. And we'll go to the first floor plan. Going to the first floor plan, we can select the wall tool again. Make sure that your foundation concrete wall, 10-inch concrete wall that you selected or created is there. The base offset then would be 0. Actually, we want to go to the top of the footing, right? Because we're creating the foundation wall. So the base or the depth goes to the top of the footing, and then you'll see the 9'4" there, inches. And then in the properties, when you think about it, the top constraint is going to be the first floor, and the base constraint is going to be the top of the footing. So instead of using wall center line for the location line, we're going to use finish face exterior. So at this point, we want to go in a clockwise pattern because we used finish face exterior. I'm going to click on the corner here of the wall, come across and click. The reason we get an error is that you can't see it. You can't see it in this view because it's going down below. But I'm going to go ahead and click on the corners and come all the way back to that same corner and click. And then cancel or escape out of that, and you'll see that when you go to the 3D view, you have this basement wall. It should be lined up with the first floor and the top of our footing, which we're going to put on it. And we did that through watching the options here bar when we were placing it at the top, and also properties. But if you click on your wall, your foundation wall, you can verify in properties that the base constraint is the top of the footing and the top constraint is the first floor plan. You can also verify it by going to one of the elevations and selecting it so that you can see that it goes from the first floor plan down to the top of the footing. Now if we double click on the basement floor plan, you should see now your foundation wall. And in the basement floor plan, we're ready to place the 4-inch basement floor. We can go to floor and pick floor architectural. We don't want a 12-inch floor, so what are we going to do here? We're going to click the edit type button, pick duplicate, type in here 4-inch basement floor, pick OK, and then pick edit next to structure and just change this thickness to 4 inches. Make sure you type in the inches and pick OK. So I'm hoping that you're seeing the pattern that when you need something different than what came with Revit, you can always pick edit type, duplicate, and start to create your own. Let's go ahead and pick OK. And now we can simply use the rectangle tool in the draw panel here to click on the inside corners of this foundation wall. There's my sketch, and go ahead and pick the green check mark. Now, if you go back to your 3D view and you hold your shift key in the wheel of your mouse, or you orbit here to the bottom, you should be able to see that you have a basement floor. Also, since we're here, I'm going to escape out of this, and we can go to the structure tab in order to place your footings. And in the structure tab, you can click in the foundation panel there, the tool called wall, but it's actually a footing. Go ahead and click that. And then just select the bottom of your foundation wall, all 4 of them, click, click, click here, and you have your footing. You can change the size of the footing also. I'm using the default footing, which is 36 by 12, but if you needed something different, pick edit type, pick duplicate, change the settings and the dimensions for it. So now that we have our foundation wall, our footing, and our basement floor, let's go back to the section that we created in the last video in the project browser. Click on the box that establishes how much of the section view we want to see, use this blue circular grip to drag that bottom part down so that you can actually see here your basement floor and your footing along with the foundation wall right there. Later on, we're going to be able to clean this up a little bit too so that we can pull that first floor to it. It depends on what your wall was made out of too. But what you'll notice here is there's another step. We need to get the dirt out of the basement because right now the dirt is going through the basement, and there's a tool that we can use to push the dirt down and out of that space. First, just in case you didn't have a section, you could go back to the first floor plan. We have this section that we created in the first video. If you don't have one, you can go to the View tab and pick Section right here. Click at the top, pull your mouse down and click at the bottom, and then you'll have this section. You can then change the limits of the section by selecting it and then dragging down here this box. I also need to move these markers over. We can select it and drag here the elevation marker over. Same here, I'm going to click on the basement one, hold my left mouse button down right here at the transition between the line and the marker and bring it across. Again, we'll need to pull this down if we're going to use it for our section. So we can click on the top of the footing, click on that little zigzag kind of elbow, and use these blue grips like we did in the other section elevation to pull them apart and see the section. Awesome. Okay, let's go get the dirt out. Okay, so now we're going to use a building pad to push the dirt down out of the basement. We'll go to the site view. Let's select the roof, right click, go to hide and view category. Now we can go to the massing and site tab and pick building pad. I'm put into a sketch mode, and actually we need to bring the dirt back to the outside of the walls, so I can use a rectangle in this case, or you can just draw it. You have all these draw tools to use, but I'll use a rectangle to just go to the corner, outside corner, and over to the other outside corner, or the opposite outside corner. And this is where we need to go to properties and say that from the first floor level, we want to change the height to a -9 foot 4 inches. Now in Revit, you can type in feet and inches, or you can just type in -9 space 4. When you pick apply, you'll see it's 9 foot 4. You can then go ahead and pick the green check mark. Let's go take a look in our section to see if it worked, and then we'll be able to put our roof back on. So double click in section. You'll see here that the dirt was pushed down here from the first floor to the top of the footing, leaving just the concrete here of the wall beyond. We can go back to the site plan, type in VG, and scroll down to our roof, put a check mark in roof, and pick OK. And now we have our roof back. The topography looks a little differently, but if you go to the 3D view or the 3D exterior rendering view, when we render this, you won't be able to see these lines, and there are ways of turning that off too. So now if you go back to the 3D view, what do we have? We have our foundation, wall, we have our footing, we have our floor in the basement. When we go to the section, you can see that it's starting to develop. And now we have the model that we can work with. Eventually we're going to also put in electrical, and we'll look at structural framing. We'll put some HVAC systems in here and several other construction related tools, creating schedules, material takeoffs, and quite a few other things in this class. Okay, hope that works for you. The model that you have now should have the topography and the foundation.